The next one I fear, and I can already see it happening in the residential market, is the commercial lenders, right? Regional banks that used to be just large lenders to kind of mom and pop businesses, small mom and pop builders, all of that. They're, for all intents and purposes, out of business. They're just trying to
Many.
survive. They're just trying to
Yes.
survive. So we
Yes.
are
And
we are or
can I add a little caveat to that too? A
sure.
lot of people don't understand that. I have people ask me, well, why does what's happening in commercial real estate? So what? These people go under, they lose their money. They look at it as a rich man's problem. They say, why does that have to affect banks? The Fed will just bail them out. But the reality is most commercial real estate loans and corporate loans, I don't have the stat on corporate loans, but they're still they're very mom and pop when it comes to small to medium sized businesses. They go to local to regional size lenders to get loans. And essentially, these lenders hold on their books assets that are to us a mortgage. So you and I go out and we borrow for a commercial building, a small apartment, a
Mhm.
small business, and our debt is now the bank's asset. And so the bank stays open basically by having greater assets than they do liabilities, just like any business. And so if we start to default on those loans, our default becomes them having to write down their assets. And so if regional banks have somewhere between 35 and 55% of corporate and commercial loans, which that's what the stats are depending on who you read, then that means that 35 to 55% or more have large assets that are dependent on us paying those mortgages. So if commercial real estate starts to fail, if small businesses start to fail, we see an uptick in bankruptcies every single month since at least this summer, and more are being announced every day. That is the banks having to write down their assets. And in previous recessions, Michael, interest rates during recession were slashed to record lows. And so typically the banks at least held their consumer deposits, but the banks have this double whammy of having to write down their assets, and then they have depositors leaving for higher interest rate options like treasuries or bonds or something that they can open with their brokerage account. So they've got this double whammy that makes a bank very quickly insolvent on paper, having to raise more reserves than what they can, and if they can't, they fold. And this is, I'm not being a doomer when I say this, but the reality is if you look at the run up of interest rates and inflation in the 70s, what followed right after was a savings and loan crisis because the asset bubble popped, the value of everything that was collateral went down, and those banks became insolvent. And we're seeing that already. The Fed and the Treasury have worked together for a stopgap for the top three banks that started to fail or that did fail earlier this year. But there is a huge potential fallout of this. And, going back to your point that that's the next domino, we could see many, many, many bank failures over the next few years. They'll get consolidated and we'll have fewer small banks and bigger large bank monopolies.
Yeah.